this is all because kind of bringing us back to kind of where did we lose this trust, this ability to trust ourselves, is because diet culture told us we had to micromanage our very wise bodies.
Hey there, I'm Amy Connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. As you know, if you have listened here before, we have conversations here on the Graced Health podcast about physical, mental, and spiritual health. Every now and then, we have a unicorn come across and talk about all three. Today is one of those days. I am thrilled to have Leslie Schilling on the show, who is a registered dietitian and author of the new book, Feed Yourself, which I have read and you will hear me talk about, and I love it. We talk a lot about trusting our good and wise body, taking back the trust of our inner wisdom, relearning to trust our bodies, and the process of doing that because we've been doing other things for a really long time. And I can't wait for you to hear the mic drop lesson about the only time the scale is mentioned in the Bible. You are going to love this. In fact, I loved Feed Yourself, Leslie's book, so much that I have chosen it as an inaugural book club book. That's right. We are going to have a free book club over on the Graced Health Community Facebook group. I will link to this in the show notes and you can head over there to learn more information. But I am very excited to read this again with you all, discuss it with you, and maybe I think we're just going to learn together. There's so much in here that I just know that I need to read it again. So head over to the Facebook group to learn more. And let me tell you just a little bit more about Leslie. Leslie has a lot of letters after her name, including registered dietitian nutritionist, and then also she's certified in various eating disorder specialties. She owns a Las Vegas-based private practice specializing in nutrition counseling for families, people with disordered eating concerns, professional athletes, and performers. Leslie has served as a performance nutrition consultant for Cirque du Soleil and the NBA, and is an expert contributor to U.S. News and World Report. You may know Leslie best as the creator and co-author of the award-winning book, Born to Eat. And this new book, Feed Yourself, is about diet culture in our safest places, including our faith-based places, and is available everywhere books are sold. Let's bring on Leslie. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you here. This is super exciting. And I tell you what, you've got it all from the nutrition standpoint, and it's just a whole broad thing. So I'm like, there's so many things. So first of all, I want to say we're going to be talking some about your book, Feed Yourself. This is a phenomenal book, especially with those who are trying to understand their relationship with food, understand the broader scope of how food impacts not only ourselves, but also other people's stories with it that may not mimic our own. And I think it's a very important read. And I'm so glad you put that out in the world.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, one of the things that you talk about a lot is your standpoint of intuitive eating. We have had a lot of discussions here on the Graced Health podcast about intuitive eating. And the thing that I want to kind of hone in on, at least at the beginning of our conversation, is this concept of trusting our body. Mm-hmm. So I'll just start there with saying, how do you, from that intuitive eating standpoint, how do you define that, trusting your body?
One, it's trusting that your body was made good and wise. So, we have to really trust. And when I speak on this topic, I'm like, God doesn't make junk. Like your body is good from the get-go. And the first part of that is trusting your body, is believing your body is good even when it doesn't feel good. When not feeling good could show up in a lot of different ways. And we have to get back to trusting ourselves, we have to stop outsourcing our inner wisdom to external devices. And that could look like our smartwatches. And I'm not saying you can't have it, right? But I'm just saying, like, it is not smarter than your body. So yes. It is not smarter than you are. So the first part in trusting your body is taking back the trust in your innate wisdom. And we can't do that when we're busy outsourcing. And that would be like to apps or to calories or to ignoring hunger, which many of us don't have hunger cues, and that's a whole different thing, but we can usually get those back. But trusting your very wise body looks like remembering that if you've seen an infant start to eat, and that would be bobbing at the breast or the bottle or palm or grasping food to feed themselves, that we are born with the wisdom to nourish ourselves, to know that we need nourishment. And so I think that is the very first step, is to reclaim, whether we're there or not physically, but to reclaim that these bodies are coming to the world with innate wisdom. And because of diet culture, we're taught also very early to not trust it.
Oh my gosh. You have just dropped so many truth bombs on there. Yes, to all of them. It's funny. I was telling you before we got on that I've been writing this new book for young women. And one of the chapters starts with, once upon a time, you were a baby, and I bet you were pretty cute, and you ate, slept, and pooped, and kind of went into that. And when you were hungry, you cried or you fussed. And when you were full, you turned away. And somewhere along the way, we have lost the trust in ourselves to do that. And the fitness trackers and the apps and all of that kind of stuff, I cannot agree more. And it is a relearning so many times over for so many of us. I mean, I've got the smartwatch, but I'm smarter than my smartwatch. Yeah. And I do not have to close the rings every day.
You do not have to close the rings. You do not. And that's something we have to be really careful about, right? Because I know people that are like, I've got to close my rings. I'm like, who is this service of self, or is this service of something else? And so closing your rings every day might not be service of self. And sometimes we forget that because we've learned that falsely that we need to outsource our wisdom.
So true. Why do you think we've lost the ability to trust ourselves? You kind of started touching on that on the diet culture, but let's dig into that some more.
Well, it starts so early, right? I mean, it starts with maybe a caregiver comment of, is your baby eating too much? It starts, and this is because we have most of the grown people in Western culture been very, very indoctrinated in diet culture, which is a system of beliefs that overvalues thinness as a means to health and worthiness. And it's wrong. But it's also in all the safe places. It's in your medical offices. It's in academic research. It's in schooling. It's in places of worship. It's in dietitians' offices. I was a student of diet culture as a baby dietitian. So it is everywhere, and it's wrapped up with health, and we regard it as truth. We don't question it. So when we see the commercial as a 24-month-old, which a lot of people joke and are like, why do we say that? It's two. There's a 2-year-old. It's when a 2-year-old is watching maybe a channel, and there is a villainous pack of French fries and a super righteous superhero apple. We don't have to say the words about good and bad. The seed is planted. There's so many subliminal messages. There's so many direct messages, the trend on the growth chart might be going too high. Well, the growth charts are really volatile, and so is growth. So we're used to seeing, we really do it's okay in the first couple years of life to see a lot of volatility. Even during puberty, there are times where volatility is very normal. But diet culture has told us it all has to be within this very narrow window, which is really keeps us from celebrating our divine diversity in bodies across the spectrum. But yeah, it starts early. It starts like there's an example that I write about. My daughter started a parents' day out when she was like 2. I think she would go Tuesdays and Thursdays from like 9 to 12 or 9 to 1 or something like that. And one of the sweet ladies, they do a coloring page and it was ice cream. And what my daughter was picking up is like, these are yummy things, but not too much. So there was the messaging here and there, like we can mean well and still plant seeds of doubt about trusting our body and our food. And so, yeah, it starts really young when we kind of start to question. And it might be that you never really had one of those food experiences, but you're looking at I'm going to just use women in this example. You're looking at your aunt or your neighbor who you love so much, who loves you like family, and you're watching this person diet to change her body, and you're picking up that this person really hates their body, even though this person is the most influential, beautiful person to you because you're a child. And you're learning that, oh my goodness, as I get older, I'm really going to have to watch it. I can't trust this really wise body. And so we have so many influences, and even people who love us deeply can influence us with diet culture as well.
And I think like that example that you were talking about of watching someone you care about, diet, or I'm losing weight, or all of the things, that's what we see. And that's what we see as normal. And that is hard to unlearn. One thing that I've been giving a lot of thought to, this is deviating a little bit, but I would love your thoughts on it, is so I have 2 kids who are, how old are they now? 18 and 19. And one of them was a great eater. And one of them just like he would eat some and then he was done. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I really messed up because there were these times, like when they're finally starting to eat solid foods and getting going. And because like he got a full, like I nursed him for 9 months and then we did the bottle. Like I knew how much he had then. And I looking back, I think, man, I mean, there was like, come on, eat some more, keep going, and just keep shoving that in there. And fortunately, he's still pretty attuned very well but I just think, man, that could have gone sideways real fast. And I just wonder how much of these influences of us, like, I mean, selfishly, it was like, I just wanted to sleep through the night.
Totally.
But like even little things like that we don't even know.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, and you really wanted what's best for your child, right? But and here's the thing too, it doesn't mean that like it turned out well, you're not having to worry about any of that. But I think I'm a dietitian and I wrote a book about infant feeding and feeding kids and toddlers. Like I think about that too. Like, and I get it wrong because we're human and we want what's best for our kids. We want them to be fed. We would love for them to have a nice variety, but our culture has taught us that they must have the most varied variety and they must have the exact amounts of this and that. And we've really started to overthink it. And probably what happened with your child is he and autonomy matters here too. He was probably like, thanks, I got it. And it turned out okay. And so like, I think, and that you hit the nail on the head. It's like preserving autonomy. So like we can offer support and guidance, and ultimately we really want to trust that they have what they need. So it sounds like you did a great job. And if you had to go back and do it over again, maybe there would be less of the have a little bit more. And like in the pediatric research, it doesn't sound like you did it enough to backfire. But like when we do like push, the exact thing that we want to happen usually doesn't happen. So if we're trying to get a kid to eat more, they tend to back off and eat less. If we're trying to get a kid to eat less, which I don't recommend, then we might find them hiding food or over interested in food. And this is all because kind of bringing us back to kind of where did we lose this trust this ability to trust ourselves is because diet culture told us we had to micromanage our very wise bodies. And we don't.
Right.
We don't. But diet culture is also in the pediatrician office, probably telling parents like, oh, I don't like where this growth chart is. We got to push, which is not necessarily what we do. We might just watch and see how this little human interacts with food and body relationship, and are they getting enough? Does it matter that it looks like a magazine article? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So we learn a lot along the way, and we learn diet culture in those safe places. So it makes a lot of sense that we will question ourselves and our own tactics. And I've had parents who decided they did something really awful. Like, I can't believe I said that, or maybe supported dieting in their kid or whatever. Like, I can't believe I did that. I wish I would have known now that was probably not the best for my child. And what we do is we repair. Like, being human is a series of rupture and repair. And we say, you know what, I did the best with the information I had, and I'm sorry, and I know better. And we're gonna do things differently. And I'm gonna support you if we need to do extra repair. I'm here. We're gonna do it. We're gonna punch diet culture in the face. That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah. And the grace in it all as well, what you're talking about, I really appreciate, which is in line with our faith of God doesn't ask us to be perfect. It's just it, and we will mess up, and we are human. And so I think that if anyone's listening and they're like, oh my gosh, I have messed up teaching my kids to trust themselves. I've messed up with me trusting myself, that there can be a lot of grace in there and learning and attunement to our bodies.
And let me validate that we all have, even people with degrees. I have degrees and certifications. Like, we've all messed up. And that's because diet culture was heavy in my training. Like, I not jokingly say I have a master's degree in diet culture because there's so much that I've had to unlearn. And just to validate that it makes sense if you feel like, man, I had no idea. Like, me either. And I got to pay for that degree for 15 years.
My expensive mistake was worse than yours. I'm kidding. Oh man. Yeah. Relearning all of that. That's a painful, expensive.
And the thing, I always joke with people, I'm like, I promise I did learn lots of good stuff too. Because I learned my master's degree was nutrition and exercise science and immunology. And I learned a lot of really lovely, very useful things. And also diet culture was very prevalent. And so over the years, I was super fortunate to do a decade or more. Still, lifelong learning is a value of mine, and still unlearning and relearning. And I think as long as we're on this earth and moving forward, I think we'll be doing that.
Oh, so true. So true. Now, speaking about kind of relearning, I have spoken with a lot of people who say the whole intuitive eating thing, that sounds great, but if I let myself have cake or cookies or soda or ice cream, pizza, whatever the thing is, I will never stop. I don't know how to learn to trust my body. Can you give us some guidance in that? And the person who is afraid of trusting their body and of trusting the oh my gosh, what do you say? The good and wise body that we were given.
Yeah. Well, I would say it makes sense that you feel like that, because we've been told that we can't be trusted with those foods since we were little. Oh, you can only have 2 cookies, or it's not allowed in school at all, right? So you don't even have to say something is good or bad if it's not allowed, right? So something's got to be wrong with it. So it makes sense that you feel that way, that you can't be trusted with food, but you can in the absence of restriction. And so that is really what, if you're hungry, of course you're going to eat more cookies. If you're hungry, of course you're going to eat more cake. If you're not fully fed, we're really going to have a mind game with all the foods that we're afraid to eat because diet culture told us they were bad, or you're going to have too much of these, or whatever. It makes sense that we feel that way. But when we realize that food is neutral, Brownie, chicken salad wrap, potato chips, piece of steak, baked potato, neutral. Food should not elicit some type of emotional hierarchy for us. Diet culture makes it do that because we make things good and we dichotomize, like it's good or it's bad, it's healthy, it's unhealthy, it's junk or whatever. And I do not recommend using those phrases at all because food is neutral. Call food what it is. A potato chip is a chip. It's not junk. It's a potato chip. A brownie is a brownie. And if you have it for breakfast, it's a chocolate breakfast muffin. So let's be clear. So neutralize food. Food needs to be neutral, and food is not related to your morality. Now, I am not in any way saying that food is nutritionally equivalent across the board. It's not. But when we're not eating foods that we feel are taboo, we're probably not having a big game in our head about it. We're like, oh, there's a brownie on my plate with my barbecue chicken and my green beans and some roasted potatoes. I'm going to eat around my plate until I'm full. If I eat the brownie first, okay. And I can tell you from like supporting my own child and just really trusting, I trust myself to put food on her plate and I trust her to decide what she's going to put in her body. That kid will leave part of a brownie on a plate almost every time. And there are times where she'll eat the whole thing because like, and I can tell you, when I was a new mom, I might not have been fully invested in diet culture. I might not have been fully there. I mean, invested in stepping out of diet culture. And so, but I was invested in her not learning it. And so even though I might be worried, oh no, is she eating too much brownie? Like that would not come out of my mouth. If I was going to but I will say I'm fully there. And I'll say watching an infant and a toddler truly trust their bodies is a beautiful, beautiful thing to bring you back to yourself and your own body trust, because you can look at this human and be like, wow, they do have it. And food is neutral. So like when she's eating dinner, and this is not just my daughter, this is just, we all are capable of this. If what you really want is chocolate cake, okay, well, eat some chocolate cake. And might you eat too much of it at first? Yeah, because you've been restricted from it for 10 years because you wouldn't let yourself eat it. You had to have something more, I'm using my air quotes, clean or healthy or approved or whatever instead. So it makes sense as we come back to honoring our cravings and come back to honoring our bodies that we might feel like we're going to eat more of the things that have been off limits, because who doesn't want off limits things? Like right. if you have like 3 cups on the table and you tell your kid not to look under the cup, what do they want to do? They want to look under the cup. And that's bringing us back to that autonomy. Like, I want to be in charge of me. I want to eat the foods that I like. And it doesn't mean that you're going to eat these foods all the time, because you're going to eat them and then you're going to be like, okay, I'm good. How am I feel? You know, like, and I help people kind of, okay, if you don't feel like you can sit with a box of cookies at night, that doesn't feel safe to you, like you don't feel supported and that feels scary. Why don't we just pack a bunch in your lunchbox and take them to work? And then let's have them there with your lunch where you feel like, okay, we can try it here. We can try it here. We could try it every day for a week. We could try it for 2 weeks. And at some point you're going to be like, okay, it's time to switch it up. So it's really about leveling the playing field with food and really removing the hierarchy. Are there foods that have that are more nutritionally dense? Absolutely. Does it mean that that's all you can eat? No, because God gave us taste buds for a reason. And it is I love a North Carolina tomato, but I love some Cheez-Its and I love a cupcake, and I'm going to eat all the things because nutrition is a gift and it's what we give our bodies. And so we can really level the playing field with food and try to remember that food is emotionally neutral, not nutritionally equal, and that's okay. And it can all fit.
And then the other thing I've been taking all kinds of notes. I'm sure you can see me looking down.
Same.
So I hear kind of 3 themes from that I want to pull out, and you can clarify or correct. I mean, one is it may take some time
100%.
because we are taking the time to relearn that food is neutral. It does not have, I love where you talk about the hierarchy. There's, and just leveling the playing field. So I guess that's the three. And then just trusting the autonomy of your body. But the time is the one thing that I think when I hear people saying, I mean, so what I think I hear you saying is, yeah, you may eat the entire sleeve of Thin Mints on the first time.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because we will get there. It just takes time.
Yeah. And that, say you're a client coming to my office and you're like, okay, I did what you said and I ate the whole sleeve of Thin Mints. And I'd be like, okay, how'd that feel? Yeah. It felt, well, did it feel guilty? Was that a feeling, or was there a physical feeling that was like, I actually felt okay because it was my whole dinner? I'm like, okay, like, what did you learn? Well, you learned that, hey, why don't I put some Thin Mints with my dinner? Mm-hmm. If that's what you want, that's fine. And there are times where if you just eat cookies for dinner, like, it's not going to kill you. I mean, it's really not. It's one meal. You know? I mean, it's one meal, and we get all wrapped up in that. Now, there are people that are diet culture prophets that would definitely argue with me on that. but I have not, in my 20 plus years of being a nutrition professional, seen that happen. So, but yeah, it does take time. And what I want to remind people is, like, they'll come in like 2 weeks later for a follow-up and be like, this didn't work. I'm like, you're 42 and you've lived in diet culture for 42 years. I think it's going to take longer than 2 weeks. So let's trust your very wise body, and let's small step this. Let's really small step this into, like, if we want to add these foods back in. And a lot of time what people figure out is that they've built these foods up and put them in a pedestal in their minds. And they're like, when I was really paying attention to these foods, not shoulding on myself saying I can't have it. When I was really paying attention to these foods, I realized that I don't really like it. Like, I didn't like that flavor at all. I realized it wasn't as good as I remembered, or I realized that I only liked it because it was taboo growing up and that my mom hid them from me. And so they were good because they were like taboo or special.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we learn a lot in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Things seem to, quote unquote, taste better when they're forbidden.
So funny how that happened.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I think I've heard this story before.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, what I know. We just wouldn't it be cool? It's like God did say, you can have everything. You have everything. Yeah. That one thing. And I feel like it's like, what a setup for diet culture to be so pervasive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the other delineation that you made that I appreciate is, because I talk a lot about, and in fact, this new book, I'm like, I might use it too much. We'll see what my editor says, but how do you feel and function? Like, this is what we're going for. We want to feel and function well, but I really like how you targeted in on how does it make you feel physically or mentally or emotionally? Because if I have salmon and broccoli and rice for dinner, that makes me feel good in my body. But is that, like, do we think that it makes us feel good because we've put that on a hierarchy? Right. Or is it because actually I have a really good workout the next day and I sleep well and, like, I just feel it. I just feel good. Yeah. So I think that's a good, I like that too. That's a good question to ask, is like, how, when we talk about feeling, is that in our head or is it in our body? And we really want to be focusing more on the body because the food has no hierarchy.
But it could be both. It could be both. And that's true. And I love how you talked about, like, I really like eating this because I have a workout tomorrow and I feel good and I sleep good. And that's really, like, that's kind of the very last part of intuitive eating too, is kind of that gentle nutrition. I'm like, really making decisions that honor your own values and health outside of diet culture. And so, but what I work with, but say you ate that, your broccoli and your rice and your salmon, but for the last 3 days, all you've been thinking about is having a piece of chocolate cake. And so maybe there's something there, right? Like, if all you're thinking about is chocolate cake, is there something there? Could we have the chocolate cake and eat it inquisitively and be like, what is this about? You don't have to figure it out, but did it get you satisfied? Do you do it all the time? Probably not. And even if you did, you might be trying to habituate, hey, we're good with it. But the thing is, I'll tell my clients too, is like, meals have to happen, or food has to happen in a way that brings you satisfaction. And I will tell you, Elise Resch does that. She is always talking about satisfaction as the like primary piece of intuitive eating, and Evelyn too. But like the satisfaction has to happen physiologically and psychologically. Because what if you had that meal and you weren't really paying attention, and it made you physically satisfied, but your mind might have been somewhere else. And so you didn't have that physical satisfaction too. I mean, that psychological satisfaction too. And for me, like if I'm craving something, like, let's find a way to put that in, because I feel like I need a complete satisfaction. Mm-hmm. So, and I will say, like I was talking to a client, and I tell this to my daughter all the time too, because sometimes she'll say, well, that doesn't sound good. Right. And I'll say, well, listen, not every meal is a party in your mouth. So, but so sometimes we do just eat to get the job done, and we don't need that kind of satisfaction from like, this has to be the most mind-blowing meal in the world. We just have to get the job done in terms of satisfaction. But we do really want to pay attention to where, like, if something has really been on our mind, giving that a place on the plate so we can honor it, so we can figure out, like, what is this about? But you don't have to figure it out. But there's nothing wrong with honoring a craving. There's nothing wrong with like, hey, I'm gonna plan that in because I really have that on my mind. And what we do is then we shame ourselves for having a craving.
Yeah.
We're like, I cannot believe all you think about is cake. Usually, if we're thinking about something like a lot, it's because we're restricted in some form or fashion. And so there's also a lot of metaphor in food and like from our childhood experiences. And so we might, like, ice cream might mean connection with people I love. It might have, there's meaning in kind of the food cravings too. So sometimes what we need might be connection with another human, and thinking of this food all the time gives us this memory of a time where it was more present in our lives. And so there's just so much more to it when it comes to satisfaction. And one of the questions I ask my clients to ask themselves, and I use in my own life too, is like, what do I need right now? And your meal sounds good. The rice, the broccoli, the salmon, it sounds delicious, but I might also need a hug. I might also need a walk with a friend. I might also need to be alone for an hour. So what is it that we need? And so that is all kind of within the framework of intuitive eating, this beautiful autonomy that is so multifaceted, and it's not just about food.
Right. Right. It's funny, as you were talking, alcohol kind of came to mind as well, because I think that we will use alcohol as a hug, as a connection, as 100%. And I'm not demonizing it at all. I mean, my community knows I enjoy a glass of wine, but I think it's very easy to like, oh man, I've had a really rough day, I'm going to do that. Well, is that really what I need? So the parallels are there too.
Absolutely. And that is the same thing. Cause it's like, it's funny to use the same example, cause I'll talk to my clients when they're like, I'm wondering about my alcohol usage too. And I'm like, well, do you feel like you need a glass of wine, or do you feel like a glass of wine is really, really yummy with my salmon dinner? What's really the premise, the intention is it necessary for you to have connection? If that's true, then okay, well, we'd like to give you other avenues that bring connection into your life besides alcohol. I'm the same. It's like, that's something that you can have if you choose that in your life. And also, how are we choosing to use it? What is the intention? And so, we can definitely do that. We can use it. We can also use it kind of as a stand-in for connection. And I've seen that play out a lot in my office when we really lacking connection, like a glass of something in your hand is a companion. And that's when we know it's like, okay, we got to work on some different connections.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that one has to fully go away. It can if you decide that's right for you. But connection is one of the greatest tools that we have And the greatest one of the greatest health promoting behaviors is focusing on good connection and relationships in your life.
Yeah.
More than a number on the scale, that your relationships in your life are the most, when we're talking about mortality risk, it reduces your risk more than anything else.
There's been a lot of research that has come out in the last few years just about the importance of connection. I mean, Dr. Sanjay Gupta included that in his book, Keep Sharp, just in terms of cognitive decline and preventing that. And connection. And I think, kind of circling back to our conversation, I think, and this is also another little story I have in my book, but if you think about the last time that you sat around the table, like say you were on a girls' night out or with really close friends and you laughed until maybe you had tears streaming down your face and just like all of that kind of stuff. And you walk away going, man, that was good for my soul.
Totally.
That's totally what we're looking for. And my guess is you probably had more than salmon and broccoli and rice on your plate.
Totally. And I will say that is that's a beautiful plate. And also that is not what a lot of plates look like. And that's okay.
Yeah. And
totally.
I was just kind of trying to get like one of these, I don't know. That's what I eat a lot for lunch just because it's easy. And
it's And we have that. And it's okay to have those things that like really work for us. Like one of the things that works for me in the office is like yogurt. I bring a bunch of nuts and granola and some fruit and some sparkling water. And like, I'm making this giant snack through the day, or I'm bringing like my sandwich. So it's like, it can look so, it doesn't have to look pretty is what I'm trying to say. Like it can just be a hodgepodge of things that get the job done. But kind of circling back, sidebar on connection that I really want to kind of hone in on is that social media is not the connection we are talking about.
Amen.
Now, can it be a great thing? Can it be a good tool? Yes, it can. But I can tell you, it is in terms of the body relationship with your food and your body space, it is far more dangerous than helpful. And like the evidence suggests that even in terms of mental health markers, depression, anxiety scoring, being off social media improves mental health. Now, I'm not saying you have to abstain, but I will tell you, it is so detrimental to someone who feels at risk for falling into disordered eating patterns. And let me be clear about that too. Dieting, as we know it, is disordered eating. So I'm going to be real clear about that, because sometimes people are like, they're not talking about me. You're talking about people with diagnosed eating disorders. I'm like, no, I'm talking about the very real and prevalent chasing a number on a scale via weight loss dieting. And it is, you're more likely to have body dissatisfaction and engage in disordered eating behaviors the more time you spend on social media. Just want to be really clear about that. Can it be good and we can meet some cool people? Sure. Can it be harmful? Yes. And we really have to be careful about our shield and our boundaries if we're going to engage in that way.
Yeah. And guarding ourselves. I agree. I've been off the socials for like 3 months as we're recording this. I'll be back on by the time this goes live, but I'm going to kind of miss not being on it.
I know. I mean, it takes a minute. Like you get off of it and you're like, wait, your thumb's already going to where it usually goes to see what's going on the socials. But it is freeing once you kind of get past that. Wait, I want to see what's happening. That kind of automatic. It's really automatic, but it kind of prevents us from the connection you and I are really talking about. Yeah. And so having good boundaries around it when you're on it, and I'm envious that you're not on it at the moment, but I take times off too. Right now is not one that I can take time.
No, you're not. Seasons. We all have seasons.
That's right.
And I will be in that season here, especially in the beginning of the year. Okay. I feel like we could just talk on and on and on. I want to ask one more question. Your book covers so many themes, and I highly recommend people that if you're interested in this and you want to dig in, go get that book, Feed Yourself. It just so many wonderful things. You talk about, this, but I'm going to tell my community this. You talk about God designed diversity in the body of Christ. You talk about diet culture, like we've just been discussing, the privilege of having adequate food and medical coverage. That's something we could have a whole completely different episode on.
100%.
And so you just totally dig into a lot of that stuff. But there's one chapter that I was wondering if you could give us a crash course on. There's a lot of meat in your book about it, but I would love, considering that much of my community is faith-based, much is in safe spaces, is in the walls of a church. Talk to us about, and give, like I said, a crash course on your weight secures your righteousness.
So somebody left a review on Amazon. They were like, I love your snarky titles of your chapters. So it's funny because I came up with the titles and thinking I would go back and soften them, but I didn't.
Well, they're like, actually, that's how my book, Your Worthy Body is they're rules to break. So these are like rules to break.
Totally. So this chapter that you're talking about is in part one. There's part one and part two. In part one, all the chapter titles are lies. Mm-hmm. So your weight secures your righteousness is a lie that we're going to break down in this chapter. And it's really about how it shows up, truly shows up in the safe places. And it might be churches that do weight loss programs together. We can mean well and at the same time cause harm. And we're really promoting that believers must conform to diet culture for lack of really a better phrase at the moment. And so ways that we perpetuate it in doctor's offices. Let's get your weight. And how about no? 90% of adult doctor's visits don't actually require a weight check. And you have full autonomy if you feel safe to use it. Not everybody does, to decline a weight check and to talk to your provider about it if it bothers you. It actually keeps a lot of people out of the doctor's office because they don't want a weight lecture or a weight loss intervention. That's not why they're there. So we also see this wrapped up really in sermons. Sometimes we might see the new year, new you type of stuff from the pulpit, and we falsely, because diet culture is in all the safe places, this system of beliefs that thinks thinness is equal to health and worthiness, which is false. But we've also seen that kind of fall into, unfortunately, this place that should be the safest place of all, which is the church. And so maybe we have an influencer or a pastor or whatever Bible study leader that really believes that bodies do have to be smaller to be working towards righteousness. And I will just tell you, nowhere in the Bible, nowhere, mm-hmm. does the only place there is a scale in the body that we talk about scales that is not fish, that is not a scale on a fish, is Job measuring his misery.
Oh.
So, talk about some foreshadowing. Yeah. Foreshadowing right there. So, the only place that we use a weight balance measure in the Bible is Job measuring his misery, or making that, or stating it in that way. And so weight has nothing to do with our righteousness. We don't need to be chasing it. When we are chasing it, we tend to not be connecting with other believers. We're preoccupied with external controls. We're preoccupied with the scale, which tells us nothing about our worth. It tells us really not much about our health either. It's not a good proxy for health, even though that is our cheap and easy way to do healthcare in our country at the moment, which is very sad.
I'm rolling my eyes over here. You guys can't see me, but that's what I'm doing.
Oh, don't get me. We could really go down a rabbit hole there. But yeah, your weight does not secure your righteousness, but we have to acknowledge that we need to disconnect it particularly in the safe places. And so and listen, there's that one. We're all just gluttons in the temple. That might be one of my favorites. And that's a lie, right? So we really have to break down these very wise, beautifully diverse bodies are made good and made different and made heavier and lighter and lumpier and skinnier on purpose. We are different on purpose. Nobody looks at my size 9.5 shoe and says, girl, that should really be a 6. Nobody has ever done that, because it's it's just genetics. It's who you are. But bodies are the same. And nobody looks at like a Saint Bernard and like, oh, that you should really, really get down to like Cocker Spaniel size. Never. And they're all dogs, right? They're all dogs, but different types. And we can respect it in lots and lots of places. But because diet culture, we believe that weight secures our health and our righteousness. And that is very dangerous.
It is. It is. I have so many questions that I wish I could ask you, but I won't. But I do have some more questions that I ask all my guests. So I want to get into some of those. The book is Feed Yourself. So make sure you grab that. If there's any of these little bits of, I mean, we've covered a lot and we've kind of just skimmed the surface on a lot. So make sure that you grab Feed Yourself if you are interested in learning more. Okay, Leslie. So this is something that sometimes embarrasses my family, but I love learning about people's tattoos. So when we're out to eat, I will ask about people's tattoos, because I have found that often when people get something on their body for the rest of their life, they have meaning behind it.
Right.
I was wondering if you have any tattoos, if you would like to share what it is and the meaning behind it. And if you don't, but you had to get one, what would it be and where would it go?
Well, you might be surprised that I do not have one, but I've thought about it a lot in my life. My husband has lots.
Okay.
But I have thought about it. And there are times where I like almost did, but didn't, because I was like, I really don't know what I would put on my body. But as I've gotten older, I'm pretty clear about what I would do. I would, on my forearm, which I would have Aslan from Narnia.
Oh,
the lion just busting out of my forearm, because I love the symbolism of the Lion of Judah, and just how beautiful that symbolism is. There's a pastor out of Texas who actually does have that tattoo that I had it in my head and I'm like, oh my gosh, he really has it. I saw it on the socials and I just thought Aslan is just so symbolic. And to have the lion with you on your body, we all always have it, but to have that visual would be pretty cool if I ever do it. My husband has lots, but
okay. Well, we so far are a tattoo-free family, and I have always told the kids, I'm like, it's kind of like the food thing. I'm like, I don't care if you get one, but if you're going to get one, you just need to make sure that you're going to be okay with it being.
You're like, when I'm 80, am I going to really?
This is why I don't have one, especially. Yes. This is why I don't have one.
Same. I almost got one. And then I asked myself that question. I'm like, when I'm 80 or when my body changes, which it's supposed to, and it will, is it going to look the way I wanted it to?
Exactly. Okay. Do you have a meaningful Bible verse that you would like to share with us?
I do. And it's kind of my life verse. And it's the verse that kind of guided me through the last decade of my life and through the book. And it's one of the early verses in the book too. And it's Romans 12:2. And it's, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And when I really think about the pattern of this world, I think about how diet culture is preventing us from being our authentic selves and moving through this world, doing whatever we're called to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So true. I completely agree. Tell people how they can connect with you and get your book.
Yeah. Well, Feed Yourself is available everywhere books are sold. It's in every format. And if you get the Audible or audio version, I read it, it was super fun to do and kind of hard because there's some hard parts. I'm like, wow, I wrote that. That's hard to read. Book Feed Yourself anywhere books are sold, all formats. My website is leslieschilling.com. I have a free newsletter that goes out every Friday that gives kind of dinner ideas and ways to stay resilient in diet culture. Yeah. And if you're on the socials, if you choose to be on the socials, I like to think my account is a safe place, and it is just at Leslie Schilling.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. And I will have that. You've provided that to us. And so I'll have that in the show notes of this. Okay, Leslie, we've covered a lot. I want you to break this down and pick out one simple thing for us to remember.
Okay. Even when it feels hard and even when it feels wrong, it is never wrong to feed yourself.
Amen. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.